Roses are red, violets are blue, but Valentine's Day has a past much darker than you knew. Forget the fluffy teddy bears and heart-shaped chocolates for a second. Let's peel back the layers of this lovey-dovey holiday and uncover its surprisingly grim and bizarre origins. It all starts in ancient Rome with a festival called Lupercalia. If you enjoy dark history, subscribe and keep watching. Held in mid-February, this wasn't your typical romantic getaway. It was a wild, chaotic fertility festival that would make your jaw drop. Roman priests, known as the Luperci, would gather at a sacred cave where the founders of Rome, Romulus and Remus, were believed to have been cared for by a she-wolf. There, they would sacrifice a goat for fertility and a dog for purification. But wait, it gets weirder. After the sacrifice, they would slice the goat's hide into strips, dip them in the sacrificial blood, and then run naked or semi-naked through the streets of Rome, playfully slapping women with these bloody thongs. Now, you might be thinking, why would anyone want that? Well, Roman women actually welcomed it. They believed being slapped by the bloody goat hide would make them more fertile in the coming year. It was less about romance and more about, well, very practical and rather messy rituals. So, next time you see a Cupid, picture a naked priest running with a bloody goat whip instead. A little different, right? So how did we get from that wild scene to the Valentine's Day we know today? Enter the Catholic Church. As Christianity spread, the Church had a clever strategy for converting pagans. Instead of banning their festivals, they would absorb and rebrand them. Pope Gelasius I is often credited with putting an end to Lupercalia in the late 5th century and declaring February 14th as Saint Valentine's Day. But who was this Saint Valentine? This is where the story gets murky, because there wasn't just one Saint Valentine. There were at least 3 different saints with that name, all of whom were martyred. One popular legend tells of a priest named Valentine who lived during the 3rd century in Rome under Emperor Claudius II. Claudius, believing that single men made better soldiers than those with wives and families, outlawed marriage for young men. Valentine, seeing the injustice of this decree, defied Claudius and continued to perform marriages for young lovers in secret. When his actions were discovered, Claudius ordered that he be put to death. The story goes that before his execution, he fell in love with his jailer's daughter and sent her a letter signed from your Valentine. Originating the tradition we still practice today, it's a romantic tale, but historians question its accuracy. It beautifully links the saint to love, but it might be more fiction than fact, likely invented centuries later to romanticize the holiday. Another Saint Valentine was a bishop from a town called Tierney who was also martyred. The details of these saints' lives are so jumbled up in history that it's hard to separate them. What we do know is that Valentine was a popular name, and being martyred for your faith was, unfortunately, quite common back then. The day was established to honor these martyrs, not to celebrate romantic love. The connection to love and romance wouldn't come until much, much later. For hundreds of years, Valentine's Day was just another saint's day on the calendar. It wasn't until the Middle Ages that love entered the picture, thanks in large part to the English poet Geoffrey Chaucer. In his 14th century poem Parliament of Fowls, Chaucer wrote about a time when birds choose their mates, and he specifically linked this to Saint Valentine's Day. This might be the first ever recorded association between Valentine's Day and romantic love. It's possible he was just being poetic, or maybe he was referencing a common belief at the time. Either way, his words had a massive impact. Suddenly, the nobility in England and France started to see mid-February as a season for romance. They began writing and exchanging love poems and little notes, called Valentines. The oldest known Valentine in existence is a poem written in 1415 by Charles, Duke of Orleans, to his wife while he was imprisoned in the Tower of London following the Battle of Agincourt. Talk about a grand romantic gesture under grim circumstances. But for the common folk, Valentine's Day was still a bit strange. In some parts of England, there were bizarre traditions and superstitions. One belief was that the first person of the opposite sex you met on Valentine's morning was destined to be your Valentine or even your future spouse. This led to all sorts of comical situations, with people trying to either orchestrate a meeting with their crush or desperately avoid bumping into someone they didn't like. Other traditions involved women performing rituals to dream of their future husbands, like pinning bay leaves to their pillows or eating a hard-boiled egg with the yolk removed and filled with salt. very romantic. It was the Victorians in the 19th century who really transformed Valentine's Day into the cultural behemoth we recognize. They were obsessed with elaborate sentimentality and showing affection. They went all-in on creating beautiful, intricate cards with lace, ribbons, and romantic imagery. The Industrial Revolution made it possible to mass-produce these cards, making them accessible to everyone, not just the wealthy. In 1847, a woman named Esther Howland in Massachusetts, often called the mother of the American Valentine, saw a business opportunity. She started creating and selling elaborate valentines, and her business exploded. Soon, companies like Hallmark got in on the action, and the exchange of pre-made cards became the norm. And of course, we can't forget the candy. In 1861, Richard Cadbury of the famous chocolate family had a brilliant idea. He figured out how to create a wider variety of chocolates and started selling them in beautifully decorated, heart-shaped boxers that he designed himself. The boxers were so pretty that people would keep them as mementos long after the chocolates were gone. So, there you have it. Valentine's Day has traveled a long and winding road. It started as a bloody, chaotic fertility festival, was rebranded to honor martyred saints, got a romantic makeover from a medieval poet, and was then supercharged into a commercial powerhouse by the Victorians. The next time you're exchanging cards or a box of chocolates, you can remember its wild and surprisingly dark history, from bloody whips to secret weddings and mass-produced love notes. The evolution of Valentine's Day is a fascinating story about how human traditions change, adapt, and sometimes get a little bit weird. Thanks for watching. If you found this dive into the dark side of Valentine's Day interesting, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more surprising stories from history. See you next time.